Thelma, Thelma Anderson. You got a good Benny Golson story that I've heard a lot of times. I never tire of hearing it. Your story about Benny. Move your mic in a little closer there, if you.
Well, it just so happened back in the day, Benny and I lived in the same apartment building. I, at that point, was in second grade, and it just so happened that on a particular Saturday, I was put in charge of Benny. So when he tells people that I babysat him, it's the truth. So we got permission to go to the Ideal Theater, which was located right around the corner on Columbia Avenue. And the picture was The Bride of Frankenstein. So right then and there, we had a little bit of a disagreement. But Benny wanted to see it, and I thought The Bride of Frankenstein was going to be something romantic and, joyful. And it was a monster picture, which frightened me and Benny. So when I hear stories about people suffering, what do you call it? A traumatic experience. That night, for the first time, our parents got together and decided to go out, and that we were both old enough to be left alone. I in our apartment, my family's apartment, and Benny in his family's apartment. Well, some of you might not remember, but at one time they converted houses on the first floor put the bedroom in where the dining room would be. So a little bit later on, I heard a rapping on the door in the midst of my sobbing and rocking back and forth in bed because Frankenstein was coming through the window. And Benny was trying to get me to get up to open the door, and I wouldn't. He fell asleep right at the door. And I was still rocking and crying when our parents came home. So that's one of my Benny Colson stories.
How about the time your mom had to come and rescue you from the Zanzibar?
Yes. Some of you might remember that the Zanzibar was in the 1900 of Columbia Avenue, and I lived on Grat Street, which is right between 19th and 18th. And I had a friend who had a luncheonette on the avenue, and she said to me earlier in the week, "Oh, Thelma, Illinois Jackette is going to be over at the Zanzibar Saturday afternoon for the matinee." And she was originally from Texas and wanted to surprise Illinois. So I did my chores and whatnot, got myself together, and said, "Mom, I'm going around the corner to the luncheonette," which I did. And then my girlfriend, Ophelia was her name, she said, "Okay, let's go." So off I go to the Zanzibar. And a few minutes after I was in there, having greeted everybody just like I was supposed to be there, I had a cigarette in one hand, cream of the coke in the other, and looked around, and who's there but my mother? And I didn't get to see Illinois that day. And I think the only reason she didn't kill me is because I was due to leave for college in 2 weeks. So they would have wasted the money that they paid to Morgan for me. And of course, as you might know, it's the first time I got back home, I called my girls and went to the Zanzibar. I was 17 at that time. So that's another story.
What was the moment when you decided to make music your life?
Well, I think it started with me way back in the second grade when I was exposed to the stage shows at the Nixon Grand Theater. Because as I look back in retrospect, all the rest of my life, even up till today, it's about going where the music is. So that's given me a lot of pleasure and sometimes pain. But as far back as then, because I think, Larry, you said something about the radio shows that you listened to after
Right.
school. I listened to Fats Waller. It had a 15-minute radio program. Now, all due respect to him, but I knew there was more to music than what was being offered on that program. And I've had a lot of fun going around listening, getting put out underage. But one thing we haven't mentioned here were the private social clubs. It's a nice name for it. And where the musicians and fans used to get together after and jam after they played. And then we also did a lot of dancing back in the 40s and 50s at a place in Philadelphia, North Philadelphia again, Bombay Gardens, with again some very talented local musicians, Mickey Collins, Doc Bagby, Stanley Gaines, and others that helped us get through in terms of the music.